America's first space hero thundered skyward, riding in the capsule of a Mercury Redstone rocket.
On January 31st, 1961, the flight of the first chimpanzee in space began. Ham was the name of this brave astrochimp who was part of a successful mission to orbit the Earth and return home safely. But what happened next is that things are somehow depressing. If you're familiar with Laika in space, then you know already that she suffered and died from unbearable pain. If so, you might be interested in knowing how Ham spent nearly all his years alone after his mission. Let's examine Ham's historical reality in its entirety. The birth of chimps in space program. Watching this life scenario of Ham, the space chimp, can be pretty challenging if you're a space enthusiast and an animal lover at the same time. You can't help but think, why? What's the purpose of sending different animals to space? Well, just like any other field of science aspects, in order to test out something for human sake, risking the lives of other species should be done. In other words, it's like a sacrificial lamb, a process where someone or something is offered a sacrifice for the sake of others. Sad, isn't it? Before NASA sent humans into space, they scrutinized various scientific tools first, and apart from telescope missions, they also have a space chimp program. If you're familiar with the theory of Charles Darwin about human evolution, it is said that according to scientific research, the physical characteristics and behavioral features that all humans share originate in ape-like ancestors. Apes are classified as mammals, and chimpanzees are considered an ape. That's why astronauts made the decision of sending chimpanzees into space. They believe that their psychological trait closely matched mankind. According to Bradley Carpenter, a chief scientist for NASA's Space Life and Physical Sciences Research and Applications Division, people didn't know what would happen to humans in space or what would happen to life in space. Therefore, this is a good indicator for astronauts. They'll not just test out machines and other kinds of stuff, but also the outcome of their well-being. Most importantly, they also observe the psychological impact of the chimp during and after the space mission. So now that the proposed research for the Space Chimp program has been hypothesized, it's time to introduce the great ape who paved the way for human exploration. Biography of Ham. Quick question, would you dare to go to space without concrete preparation? Thanks to Space Chimps, they carried out the mission for you, all for the glory of data and of course for carrying all the trauma. Well, do animals have the right to complain in the first place? I guess not for every mission in space. Way back in 1957, a space hero chimpanzee was born in French Cameroon in West Africa. At a very young age, he experienced a horrible event rather than living his early years in her mother's safety. Sad to say, but he had to split apart from her mother. Ham was captured by animal trappers, carrying him all the way to a rare bird farm located in Miami, Florida. Apart from being away from his mother at such a young age, do you know what's far more worst about his early life story? It's the fact that his mother died protecting him from the animal trappers who captured him. There's also belief that Ham was probably the last baby of his poor mother. So what happened next is that Ham was only 2 years old when he was purchased by the United States Air Force. It was in 1959 when the animal trappers sold Ham for $457. During those years, humans are obsessed not only with the idea of exploring the depth of the universe, but also with a pride purpose to venture into space as the first place among all the other nations. The two rival nations are the United States of America and the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, which is made up of 15 countries adjoining the force of Eastern Europe and Asia. And from some who didn't know, the USSR lasted only for several years. Now back to the story. The two rival countries are desperate enough to win the race in space. As a result, all it takes for them is to test out all kinds of tools, and that is when animals were viewed as a tool to navigate and let them win this space race mission. Another interesting fact is the reason behind Ham's name. Before he was named Ham, he was first dubbed Number 65. Number 65 in the sense that he belongs to the 40 space chimps of NASA's mission, a journey that sparked from the said race of two rival countries. They jumpstart their mission by using little animals like fruit flies and mice. Then they upgraded to more conscious animals like rabbits, dogs, and monkeys. And if you're wondering why Ham is the name given to him to this day, it's because after the US Air Force brought him, they sent him to the Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. From there, another chapter of his life unfolds. He was trained in a learning center named Holloman Aerospace Medical, and if we put this in an acronym, we'll have the name Ham as a result. The name of him came from the idea of his trainers who handled him with extensive training. Training and selection. If you're thinking of some typical training, then it's time to change your thoughts. Ham could have spent the years of his life just being carefree in the zoo, playing with other monkeys. What he experienced instead is playing with scientific tools. He's seated on a chair which acted as his training machines to operate all kinds of tools that surround him. Given that animals need to be trained with lots of efforts and patience, in the case of Ham, it's sort of different. All it takes is a banana and a little bit of electricity. Oh, what's the use of this? In his chair, he has a lever in front of him, and whenever he sees a blue light indicator, he should push the lever. If he successfully follows the instructions, he will get a reward, which is banana pellets or drinking water. If he failed to do this task, he will have to suffer the consequences of an electric shock on his feet. However, this doesn't end the difficulty of his training. Ham also endured his moments being placed in a decompression chamber. This chamber serves as an answer to the question of scientists. They question what would happen if they lose pressure in their spacesuits. That's why they tested the chimpanzees and placed them in a chamber to get their answer. Ham was placed in this chamber for 7 to 8 hours, and he experienced extreme pressure changes. The results of his performance were tracked, and most importantly, his responses and other psychological traits were also gathered. After spending 1 year and 6 months of training, he was selected among the other chimpanzees candidates. The day of the mission. In 1961, Ham was put on what they call a couch that served as his cage. The couch had a window which serves for him to glimpse the wondrous and tough light that awaits. During the momentum of his flight, the trajectory was 1 degree off from calculation, and so his acceleration was quite different than what they anticipated. His rocket was traveling at a very fast rate, allowing his spacecraft to spin wildly, and it approached a much higher distance than what they calculated. Apart from the challenges that Ham suffered from his tough ride, his spacecraft was also challenged. Sensors indicated that the main capsule was rapidly losing pressure. Then it was later discovered that the air in the inlet snorkel valve was malfunctioning and that a pin had come loose. But despite these difficulties Ham encountered, he was able to perform his task admirably. On the other hand, scientists are quite worried. That's why Ham's mission lasted only for almost 17 minutes. Signals were sent to abort him already. During his landing back to Earth, his parachute was released and he landed on the sea ready to be retrieved. From there, Ham helplessly waited for his rescuers, nearly submerging in the water. It took the US Navy about 27 minutes to find him. So what happened? Is Ham still alive? To directly answer this question and to ease your attention, well, yes.
He was a little dehydrated, he was a little fatigued, but they gave him an apple and he liked that.
With regard to his physical injury, Ham only suffered from a bruise on his nose. But the question is, what about his mental health? You know, humans aren't the only ones who are capable of hiding a smile through the pain. Although some people believe that Ham was totally worry-free after his mission, little did they know that he carries a lot of trauma. Ham couldn't even get back to his couch to offer sweet photography, no matter how much they forced him. Cause of Ham's death. Ham retired for good after his space journey. Well, at least he could be cared for as a reward for his mission. But instead, he was sent to a zoo and spent 17 years of his years all alone. However, before he died, he was given a chance to live with his fellow chimps for 5 years. He sadly passed away on January 18, 1983. In honor of his big contribution to paving human spaceflights, Ham was buried in the International Space Hall of Fame in New Mexico. It's easy to recognize the works of the most intelligent scientist in the field of astronomy. But little did we know that there was once an animal named Ham who suffered for human sake. Now that we've witnessed his story, what do you think? Was sending animals into space an ethical choice, or should this approach be avoided?